Hello, and welcome to the Ripple Effect. Real conversations with real people about what moves them. And today is our first conversation, and it is with Pam Gold, who is, yes, my dear friend, but she's also quite an incredible human being. I'm going to read her little blurb I wrote about her. Pam is one of those people whose ripples reach far, from building a transformative wellness business to embodying leadership in the most grounded and loving way. She lives at the intersection of power and purpose. And today we are going to explore some of the turning points that set her on that path. Welcome, Pam.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here.
It is an honor to have you here. So just a brief overview of what you do, other than being an incredible mom and all of the everyday wonderful things you do, but I'm talking about your work and your inspiration, and then we'll talk about how you got there.
So I am super, super passionate about helping each person have accessible and attainable highest forms of integrated fitness. So that's physical fitness, mental fitness, and energetic fitness. So how capable are we to responding to whatever life invites us to hold and co-create with and make the most magic happen every given day? That's my passion.
I love that. And when I met you, you were in a brick and mortar place, which we'll talk about in a second. But I want to know, from when you went to college and trying to figure out what you wanted to do with your life.
Yeah.
Was it with fitness? Was it with health and wellness? What
Well,
was your direction?
I was a science nerd. I loved figuring out everything. I wanted to understand how everything worked. And so my first 2 years at Yale, I was a hard science nerd. I was doing genetics and microbiology and biochemistry and organic chemistry, all that fun stuff. And I thought maybe I'd be a doctor, but that didn't ever really feel true for me. And I thought maybe I'd be like a scientist, but I'm so extroverted that me being in a lab all the time without all my favorite people around me, that's just not who and how I am. So then actually in the middle of sophomore year, I switched to political science, and I was super passionate about understanding, the science of politics and leadership. And it really is very much sister studies, because you just want to understand how things work so I could make the best out of everything. That was always my passion. And so I ended up graduating with a BA in political science. I accepted a job out in Boulder, Colorado at a PR tech firm because I had no idea what I wanted to do. But I was like, oh, if I'm in Boulder, I'm outside, I'll be exploring and active, and I'll be happy and figure it out. And at the last second, I got a job offer that kept me in New York. And then I ended up, of all things, in the restaurant industry. I had waitressed at college for a company, and they were scaling and growing, and their chairman, CEO, and founder needed an assistant. So I ended up staying on the East Coast, ending up in New York City. And it was one of those life moments where I would have had a wildly different life trajectory if I didn't get that phone call. That last day at Yale, when my phone was still hooked up, I got a call to go to this other job interview, and my life went whoop.
Wow. Okay. So when that happened, you were all set to go
To
to
Colorado.
Colorado,
Yeah.
and you got this phone call. What made you say yes to this thing in New York?
It definitely felt exciting. I've always been someone who follows joy and follows excitement, like that sense of expansion with the most potential. And sometimes that feels scary, but I've always been a kind of more brave, impulsive person as opposed to letting kind of anxiety slow me down. So this particular job opportunity was someone and with a company that I already knew that had a lot of integrity. I had waitressed, already for like a year for this company, and knew a lot of their founders, and they were young and they were dynamic, and it just felt very exciting, and it felt very in integrity for me. And originally the job wasn't based in New York City, it was based in Connecticut. And had it been in New York City, I might not have taken the job, because New York City always felt a little intense and constricting energetically to me. But I ended up here anyway.
Here we are.
Here we
So
are.
how long did you do that job for?
4 years.
Okay, so then
Things you didn't know about me, huh, Denise?
this is a total surprise to me. So, but this is great. Did you go from that into your kind of next field? Was that your from the restaurant business to
Nope. Then I was in the fashion business. I left that original company, and my first job interview was with a fashion designer named Josie Notori, who it could not have been a more kind of like left field industry for me because I'm not a fashion person at all. I'm such a deep kind of energetic person, and I'm not particularly materially aesthetic. Like that's just not my jam. But Mrs. Notori was a female entrepreneur. She was so strong and so self-assured and so wise and so accomplished. And to be able to work with her and learn from her was really exciting for me. And so I took that job and I was there for 4 years, and then I became a mom.
Did you seek that job out, or did she walk into the restaurant? Like, how did you connect?
So I spoke to a headhunter after I left that first company.
Okay, so you were ready to leave that
Yes.
restaurant
Boy,
job.
that whole thing kind of, that first job was, that's a whole nother story, whole nother.
Okay, we don't have to go into that, but you knew that that was not your path at
Well,
this.
no, I was let go. So my boss left, I left. And so it was time to find my next thing. It was very sad. It felt like a divorce. I would have stayed with that company my entire life. I loved that company. I loved those people. I would have stayed there my whole life. I never would have left.
But you weren't pursuing other restaurant jobs after that.
No, restaurants, I mean, it was interesting, but I always was someone who wanted to learn about a lot of things.
Okay,
So
so the headhunter brought you to Notori, and then
that's
you
where I
became
was
a
for 4 years.
mom,
Then I became a mom, and I was able to stay home with my kids and focus on being a mom.
and your journey as a mom is what led you into your next
Fitness and wellness.
thing, fitness and wellness, because
I lost myself when I became a new mom. I somehow, after my second, gained back all of my pregnancy weight without realizing it. And I'm a little person, so like an extra 35 pounds on me is a lot. And I had no idea that I was the size that I was. It was like sweatpants season, you just don't realize. And yeah, so I got myself really healthy. I got myself back super fit. And I studied nutrition, which, because I had the biochemistry background, studying nutrition was kind of silly. I was like, why did I think none of this applied to my body? And so I got really fit, really healthy, learned a lot about nutrition. And then I went back to yoga school. And that's when I started meditating.
and that's when you started to get downloads about different paths. So I know that you originally started when you wrote a book that was downloaded to you.
In 2017, end of 2016, beginning of 2017, I wrote that book, and then I published that. And then
And that book was called,
Find More Strength, 5
Mhm.
Pillars to Unlock Unlimited Power and Happiness.
Okay.
Yes. And then I created a parenting program, Peace Power Parenting. I was like, how can I help? How can I help? That was my main question always is, how can I help?
I
And
know that about you. I know that's true.
yeah. And parents, definitely needed more peace and power. I mean, when you're in it, you're in it. And I had been a personal trainer, and I'd helped a lot of moms get fit kind of all those years. But once I started meditating and experiencing kind of that inner world and that inner strength, I realized that's what my passion and purpose and real creativity really was. And so if you'd asked me at that time if I ever would go back to running like a physical fitness business or something that seemed like a physical fitness business, I would have said, no, I don't see that ever happening. But then in 2018, I ended up starting New York City's first biohacking fitness studio, which very much presented as a physical fitness studio because I had all of the tools that I was using starting in 2017, early 2016, to stay as fit as possible with as little time as possible. And there was no one in New York City that had the technology and had, those protocols. And so I started a business.
Which at the time made no sense to you. You
Made
just
no sense.
getting
Made no
that
sense.
nudge.
Made no sense at all. Someone had asked me to do it, and I said, no, I'm not interested. Thank you. And then I had other friends that said, if we do it, will you help? And I said, yeah, I'll help. And so I spent some time helping them. And then they ended up backing out. And then I was like, no, I'm meant to do this. Because at this time I had all these downloads about the name and the logo and all the vision for, how to market it. And so it just kind of all came through meditation.
And it was super successful until COVID.
Yes, we were in the Wall Street Journal 2 weeks before COVID and then had to shut down.
Just going from like thinking you would never do that to that's what you did. You had a feeling there was something that just kept pushing you toward it, like something higher than yourself, something bigger than you. Your brain was saying no, and
Like, don't do that. Why would you do a bricks and mortar business? That's going to be awful. And my brain was right. And it was the thing.
but no regrets because it
No
led you to
regrets.
the next thing and
Yeah.
the next thing.
Yeah, no, I've grown from all of it, and it's just continued to expand and evolve. And
Okay, so let's just go back for a brief moment. So when you were in that mom state, staying home, Because I think that these things that we become more aware of the feelings and the things that happen in our bodies as we grow, right? And you at that point yet weren't really doing the mind body stuff. You hadn't started the yoga meditation stuff.
Right.
But when you figured out that you had just weren't feeling good in your body, can you remember? I mean, I know this is a hard question. Can you remember any type of feeling in your body other than the feeling of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I put on this weight, but like a physical feeling or a sensation that actually brought you to yoga or brought you to that next thing? And I know that this happened when you came into the actual brick and mortar space, because we already had this conversation and our video failed and we're redoing this. Full
We're doing
disclosure.
so well. We're doing so well.
We are doing well, but I'm asking different questions. So I'm very
Yeah.
curious
Yeah.
if you can pinpoint from that, from little baby Pam,
Yeah.
who had, this whole pre stuff that I didn't know about.
Mhm.
Can you pinpoint, like, can you recall a feeling that just pulled you, or maybe not even a specific place in your body, but just the way that you felt that made you take that next step?
When I realized how much weight I had gained, I felt very sick. I felt like there was this heaviness and that feeling of sickness. I felt the need to call a bunch of my closest people and tell them, like, immediately. Like, I needed to hold myself accountable and connect and, like, not be alone in it, and then make a commitment to other people that I was going to do something about it right away. Because it literally felt like a sickness. There's like a very intense heaviness. And
Not just physically, but emotional heaviness, like a weight on you because of the weight, no pun intended.
yeah,
You started and you made this commitment to yourself and you told people, which also going back to our earlier conversation, and you got the download to go from doing all the stuff that you had created with the moms and this stuff to having a brick and mortar place, and how your brain was saying no, and you felt like tightness and restriction here, but you felt the sensation, you said, in your pelvis, which is, I think of the sacral area, which is creativity, but you felt restriction here. And now it's just interesting when you're telling me this, you felt the need to tell people and to put it out there and speak your truth.
like,
And so
vomit,
just,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
And it's interesting also that you're saying that you wanted to tell people and be accountable to them, but really you were being accountable to yourself.
yeah, absolutely. But it's definitely like I'm an extrovert. And so for me, that connection, I do my best work in connection with other people.
Right. I get that. So you did it and you felt very much in flow as you're going through this. Did it take you a while to find that yoga and meditation was
So the
resonating?
physical was easy, getting myself on a very consistent routine. I change my behavior very easily. I'm not typical in that way. So it was very easy for me to just set a plan and no matter what, like, do it. And I really dove into nutrition and being very diligent about my choices and eating very healthy and being very self-aware about portion sizes and all of that. And so the weight came off pretty quickly and I got very fit. I got fitter than I ever was. The harder part, which is continued, for many, many, many years, it's like peeling back layers of onions, to really, really unlock my true peace and power emotionally and energetically. That's been a much slower, deeper process. Once I went to yoga school and started meditating regularly, that had a big shift because things became clear to me that I just couldn't see before. The more subtle ways that our body and our energy is talking to us. So like before I started meditating, my brain was still very much tuned into the dense kind of noise of being human. And I wasn't as tuned into the subtle messages that, my body, my subtle body and dense body would always be telling me. So once I started hearing those messages, it started the process. But then it has been 12 years since I went to yoga, since I started meditating.
And you still meditate regularly?
So my meditation practice has shifted. So now every breath is a meditation. And I feel like I do these micro meditations throughout the day. And because I can drop in and out into different states of consciousness, one of my teachers, Jean Houston, calls it like quantum time. And so I can take, just 30 seconds of regular time and experience a really, really big expansion of quantum time and kind of meditate in that expansion state. But I don't I don't sit and meditate every 18 minutes every day like I used to.
I I doubt that you would have been able to maintain the healthy relationship with food and nutrition and staying fit if you didn't have that other aspect. They go hand in hand. And I think
Absolutely.
that's a big missing link for a lot of people.
Oh,
You-
absolutely. And that's what truly the portal program, is the culmination of all of these realizations, which is why we put so much emphasis on the mental fitness pillar and the communal fitness pillar, in addition to the physical sleep and nutrition pillars. And the other thing about the portal program that I don't know of any other kind of health and fitness and optimization program that does this, but there's definitely an order of operations, and the nervous system, our energetic system, needs to be cared for first. And from that, it's the mental, and the physical is the last. And so if we practice that consistently, we can make very small shifts and actually have it ripple out and get very big results.
which is amazing. And it's also really great that your new portal program has rippled out from the brick and mortar place where you got to observe firsthand so many people's experiences. And as somebody who was fortunate enough to experience it, knowing how much emphasis was put on the recovery stuff and all of the nervous system calming, that really was just life changing. And to be able to not have to go to a facility so you can bring this program to everyone is amazing. And we will have all the details about the program in the notes. It is so interesting, and hearing about those first parts of your life and how each step kind of rippled into the next step. And I don't think, from everything that you've said, I don't think you would be where you are now without each and every one of those steps. You could have taken a completely different turn. The person who left your company could have taken you with them to a different restaurant, and you would be in a whole different
We
space.
tried, but I was like, no, it is interesting. And I've experienced, I don't know if I'm sure you have too, sometimes when I go into healing sessions, and I've been able to work with people like you and many others who are so gifted at this, where we can go back to 16-year-old Pam and identify that, there's still guilt stuck in my system, and release that, and then kind of experience the lifeline from that version of Pam that isn't still carrying the guilt. But what I experienced when we released that, not just from a professional standpoint, but in that lifeline, I met my now ex-husband, and I met him. I didn't marry him because I wasn't holding that vibration of energy that led me to make that decision. And so I experienced an entirely different lifeline where my kids weren't even born, which, talk about me having to grieve a lot of attachments on one fell swoop. It was a pretty interesting experience because, different lifelines, we make different choices and we have very different experiences, and
Absolutely.
people come into our lives for all those reasons.
That's what's so cool about the ripple effect, because it really, it kind of, as you were just saying that, it reminded me of, there was a movie, I think it was with Gwyneth Paltrow, where if she
Revolving
took
doors
this
or
door,
something.
yeah, something
Yeah,
about
yeah,
doors. And if you take
yeah.
this door, you end up here. And if you take this door, you end up here. Totally different.
Yeah, and it sounds woo until you actually experience it. And again, in meditative states, you can kind of zip around and experience these
I
different.
mean, I think that those things are less and less woo and more quantum. And we
Yeah,
just,
yeah, I agree. I think it's just quantum, and when we can drop into those states, there are things that we can experience, and then we get such a profound benefit from those experiences. Because in that particular lifeline, when I did that healing, I had the opportunity to grieve my children, and my friend who was walking me through the experience, I was wailing because my children weren't alive.
right.
And
They,
so I,
they were never here. They didn't.
right. And so I didn't have them. And I was,
Right.
of course, very upset, understatement of the century. And she said, Pam, stop, look, they're there. Look, where are you? And I said, I'm in a field. Never forget this, ever. I said, I'm in a field. She said, look, they're there. And I looked, and these two butterflies came and just flit around me for just like 30 seconds, and then flit up. I'm like, they're
Oh,
butterflies.
oh.
Yeah. And then because I've released all these attachments to my children, all this fear that makes us cling, I'm such a better mother. I'm able to actually just relate to them and stand with them and be like, you have to make your decision. I'm not going to let my fear of you making a wrong decision or going in a way that I'm afraid isn't going to turn out well for you. I don't let that influence how I parent them, which is huge.
That's very huge. That's a big life lesson for a lot of parents out there,
Yeah.
for sure. That path is happening in another timeline.
Yeah.
But right now, the path that we are on together is this
Yeah.
path, and you have
Yeah.
created this amazing thing that has rippled from
Good
all
segue. Way to
things.
get back there. About ripple. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
many ripples, but yes, in this timeline, I'm so grateful, to have been able to do the work that I do, and of course, be a mom and, be here with you.
And so many people are grateful for you and the things that you bring to people and your energy. You have just such beautiful energy, which my guess that you have that same beautiful energy in all of your timelines. That is my guess. Going back to this timeline and all of these things, I mean, these are things we don't think about often. Like, where were you when you graduated college? Where did you, like all of those things, they're not on your daily radar. You're not thinking today, oh, I could be in the restaurant business. Like I know you and know that that's not part of your thought process on a daily basis. So being as aware as you are about your mind body connection and everything, is there something that is consistent that you can feel, or a sensation that has told you that you're on the right path? Do you have a feeling, or the opposite of that, when something might lure you a different way, is there a feeling that you get that is like, no, no, that's not the path? Like you had just said before that your old boss wanted to take you and you were like, no, I don't want to do that. So can you kind of just speak to that?
Yeah, there's definitely an energy that feels higher, that feels expansive, that feels lighter, that feels more empowered and more joyful, more playful. And it's a visceral feeling that I absolutely get. And I do deeply believe that we can trust that. We can trust what sparks joy and follow what sparks joy. And there is a difference between joy and pleasure, right? Like pleasure, oftentimes there's a piece of it that there is a darkness and we end up kind of lower than where we started, but joy is pure. It's very pure and present and powerful and light. And I've always felt that, and I've always trusted that. And it's not to say that I don't make and haven't made, a million mistakes. It's just, again, like a mistake is just a perfectly timed learning opportunity. And so if we trust that, then we trust that our intention with going in this direction was pure, it was following joy, and trust that what then starts to pivot us in a slightly different direction is the next stepping stone, and just trust those stepping stones and just keep it flowing towards what feels like the highest and best. Like, what's the next best thing to do? And there is a feeling for that.
And that feeling, and I hear you, and I like can feel that feeling. Can you, like, if you had to just close your eyes and say, where in my body, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Where in my body do I first feel that feeling?
My heart.
In your heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a feeling that your feeling was
I'm feeling.
in your heart. That makes perfect sense. That is how our bodies talk to us. And that's one of the things I want people to just start tuning into and being aware of. And everything is a learning experience. And I don't think there really are wrong choices, that they just take us on different paths and ripples in different ways.
And we can always, course correct. There's very few true closed door decisions in our life. And for us to trust that if that's what we end up kind of moving through and it is a closed door, to trust that that was part of what the path is meant to be for us, and to kind of, surrender and just keep it moving.
Yeah. And I'm excited to see where Portal goes, and I'm excited to be a part of it. Okay, now we have a little fun segment for you and everyone else to get to know me a little better. I'm going to give you 2 lies and a truth, and you have to tell me which one is the truth.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so the first one is, I have crashed many weddings, and one time I actually gave a toast. The second one is that I went to 5 different colleges. And the third one is, during a long power outage, I taught myself how to play the guitar.
Power outage. To teach yourself to actually play the guitar, I feel like takes longer than a power outage, but I could definitely see yourself doing that. I could see you doing that. I'm going to say you did not crash weddings, but I could be completely wrong. And what was the other one?
That I went to 5 different colleges.
I'm going to go with the guitar, that the guitar is what you did. That's the truth. I failed again, huh?
You
Yeah.
failed. I did crash weddings, but I didn't actually make a toast. I went to 5 different colleges.
My colleges. Okay. Well, I'm learning a lot about you in
Yeah.
our retakes.
I'm not really proud of that 5 different colleges thing. I was very indecisive. It was mortifying to my children when they were filling out their college applications. Wait, Mom, where did you go to school again? I was like, which time?
Well, I want to know what they are now.
Tulane,
Uh-huh.
Hebrew Union College in Israel,
Okay.
University of Florida,
Mhm.
NYU, and
Mhm.
Hunter College.
Very cool.
And we can talk about that story at length another time.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Pam. You're the best. I'll put all the notes about Portal so people can learn about it, because it really is a special program. And it's so great now that it is available to everyone, anywhere.
Right, no
If you
excuses.
have a smart
What you
device,
needed.
which I think
Mwah.
everyone does. Bye.